Welcome to the Equinety Podcast, where horse owners just like you share their incredible Equinety stories and how Equinety is changing their horses' lives. Whether you're searching for something to give your performance horse better focus, faster recovery, and more stamina, or in the extreme case where all hope seems lost, give your horse what it needs to help heal at a cellular level, you'll find it here. So jump in on today's episode to hear how Equinety is helping horses worldwide. Now, welcome your host, John Dowdy.
Hello and welcome to this week's Equinety Podcast. We are swinging up into the north part of the country. That would be Michigan. And we've got Ashley Thompson on the call this week. Ashley, welcome to the Equinety Podcast.
Hi there. I'm so excited. How are you?
Doing very well. Thank you so much for taking the time. I'm really excited about having you on because, well, you got a lot going on.
We do.
Yeah. So let's get right into it. We're going to talk about 4 or 5 different horses on this call, and we're going to be talking about everything from Navicular, Sidewall, recovery from knee surgery, just to overall conditioning, focus, all kinds of good stuff. So, but before we get into that, give us a little bit of your background. How long have you been riding, competing? What are some of your biggest accomplishments? Those types of things.
Well, I was raised in a horse family, so I have been riding and competing pretty much since I could sit on a horse. So for 20-some years now, and mainly now I just barrel race. Growing up, we did roping and all sorts of things, but now we just run barrels. We raise and train our own horses, and then recently we have taken on some outside horses for training. So we've been quite busy these last few years.
Yeah.
My last few years have been I've had a mare that has been, to us, very spectacular and outstanding. So we've been on a roll so far these last few years.
Well, tell us about that.
Well, as a futurity horse, she definitely just came on strong, and she pretty much won or placed top 3 in every futurity I took her to. And then we went to Congress, and she won the sweepstakes in the Congress. And then she won that year at the BFA. She was 3rd in the world for futurity horse BFA money earners, and she won the Future Fortunes Amateur at the BFA. And then she kind of just kept on rolling into the next year. We went back to Congress, and she won Congress for the 2nd year in a row. Don't quote us, but we have been told that there's only been 2 horses that have been able to do that. So that was exciting. And then she won the Derby Amateur Finals at the BFA as well. So she's definitely been a rock star. Right.
So when she gets off the trailer, does she strut around?
Oh, yeah. She has a very large, confident personality, that's for sure.
Oh, that's funny. Everybody look at me. That's right.
Yes.
I'm the one.
She knows she's good, and it's definitely her world, and you just abide pretty much by her world and her rules.
Oh, that's fantastic. So, prior to us getting into the stories of these different horses, how did you come across the Equinety product to begin with? In other words, now we have 2 products. We're specifically talking about Equinety Horse Excel because you have yet to try the second one, which is actually en route to you. So I might have to do an update on that one. But so all these are...
I'm so excited to try that one.
Yeah.
So we had a horse, and it kind of, I guess, just leads into one of my first things with Equinety, I guess. But we had a horse that I originally raised. I sort of raised him. I bought him as a 2-year-old. I trained him, and then we sold him. And then I had my daughter, and she was 2, so I needed to find her a PB horse. So we ended up buying him back, and he had severe navicular, which was kind of one of the reasons why I bought him back, because I knew he couldn't run off on my daughter.
Yep.
So we bought him back, and he was a little worse than we anticipated. So we were just trying products, and things weren't working. And I was scrolling through Facebook, and I seen the Equinety, and so we thought we'd try it, and we noticed a huge difference in 2 weeks. So almost to the extreme of almost too good of a difference. So that's pretty much how it's just trial and error and scrolling through good old Facebook.
Yeah, that has been worked very well for us. So how long have you been using the product on that horse?
On that horse, we we got him back, and I think we had him for a month, and we started using it. So we've been using Equinety now for, probably 4.5 years now.
That's been since almost the beginning of Equinety. So we've just been around for, a little over 5 years. So that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. After 4.5 years, so still on product, still doing great?
Well, that horse we no longer have.
Okay.
But we have, one of our other horses, we have had her on it for probably 3 years. And she's on it. She's doing great. Some of them we've had on it, and it's fixed the issues we started with, but we just keep it on them for maintenance or preventative. So
sure.
We see huge difference in it.
Yeah. Now, going back to the Navicular horse, so when you brought the horse back, so you had mentioned that she was worse than when you sold. So in a matter of a couple of weeks, you noticed just a significant difference in just overall the soundness, everything?
Oh my gosh, it was huge. So when we got him, we knew that he was Navicular, something he kind of just grew into. And so when we got him, my daughter we were lead lining her, trotting around, and he could hardly trot. And so we were my husband and I were like, oh, we can't really take him anywhere in public. So we started trying things. We tried Equinety, and in 2 weeks at a trot, his gimp, I call it, was pretty much gone. He just trotted. If you didn't know he had Navicular, you would not know it by watching him. And then probably I'm going to say 30 days into it, he didn't have a gimp at all anymore. No head bob, no nothing.
Wow.
He started going back to playful bucking and just being young and youthful again. We kind of actually took him off of it because he started feeling a little too good for our daughter. So we put him on it for a little while, get him back, I say sound again, and get everything good. And then he'd get happy and playful and healthy again. So then we'd take him back off it and have him be a little bit more better for her, because at that time she was a year and a half or two. So we didn't need anything too extravagant.
Sure. Now, I think it's important to point out what's going on there from a scientific level. So if you're, tuning in, maybe you're dealing with some navicular issues, it's probably one of the most common things, although I say that, and hoof issues are by the hundreds, if not thousands, of testimonials coming in. I mean, all kinds of issues, but Navicular, this has worked very, very well with Navicular horses. And of course, keeping in mind, this is a supplement, and if things are too far down the path, well, there might be really not anything that would help, but for the most part, this has really, really been beneficial for Navicular horses. And as you were saying, you would put the horse on and they're feeling really good, and so you'd take them off and then they'd go back to kind of being gimpy again. So what's going on there from a scientific level? These amino acids are specifically formulated to give the body what it needs to stimulate the pituitary gland, which is the master gland in the body. And that's what releases the necessary hormones, which then help the body repair at the cellular level. So when you give the product, say in the morning, the hormones are released, and then they have a 23.5-hour life cycle. So by the time you give it the next morning, the hormone levels are back to where they would normally be for that age of a horse. And that's why you give the product every day. So over time, what you were noticing in this case, the horse is feeling really good, youthful, and that's where the bucking and playing and stuff's coming in. So it's not a medication. It's not something loaded with caffeine or anything like that to make the horse hot. They just feel good because their cells are now operating at their optimal levels. So now if you stop giving the product and the hormone levels just go back to the way they were, and so that's where the gimpiness was starting to come back in and things like that. So anybody tuning in, that'll give you a bit of more insight of really what's going on there. But we have people every now and then like, oh, well, I was given the product for 2 or 3 months, I didn't notice anything, and then they stopped giving it, and all of a sudden, now they noticed when they stopped giving it. Yes. So you might even have some examples of that as well. So
yeah, it is amazing. You're around them all the time, so you notice the change, but then after they've changed, I feel like sometimes you don't notice they keep getting better until you take it off and we're like, oh, this isn't working, and then you cold turkey it, and then you're like, oh, yeah, that was working.
Yeah. So awesome. Yeah. So that was your first horse with the Navicular. The second one, a mare with some sidewall things going on. Tell us about that one.
So we had a mare. We purchased her young, and just due to some faulty. We had some farrier issues ourselves too, and so we just had her kind of kept coming up a little off. So we had some X-rays done of her feet, and she had some sidewall issues going on. So because we had such great luck with Equinety for the first horse, like, hey, this stuff is like, I call it a magic in the jar, but this stuff is just amazing. Let's just try that. So we did that, and 6 months later, she just progressively got better. She was never not sound. For me, I could just tell because I worked her and ride her every day, and I've known her for so long. She was just a tick off. And then after 6 months of being on it, we had her re-x-rayed, and all the issues she had in her foot with the sidewall was just gone. And that was the only thing that we changed, was just adding that to her daily feed.
Now, you were giving her 2 scoops a day, correct?
Yes. So for her, we gave 2 scoops. Like, we're trying this, and I think I read somewhere about you could do 2 scoops. I'm like, all right, this mare to us was real special. She was my first maturity horse, just things like that, sentimental reasons. And I'm like, she's worth the extra scoop. So we gave her 2 scoops in the morning, every morning. And then, like I said, in 6 months, when we had her re-x-rayed, because we were around that same vet again, and it was just gone. It was amazing.
Wow. Do you remember what the vet had to say about that?
He was just like, do you switch your farrier? And I said, well, we did, and we actually removed her shoes. Like, we just did weird things that he's like, no, don't do that. And we took her shoes off because I wasn't doing much with her at that time. And I'm like, well, we just started feeding the supplement. And he's like, oh, kind of rolled his eyes at it. And I told him what it was. And he's like, oh, I've heard real good things. So he did know about it. And his attitude changed a little bit when we told him what it was.
Yeah.
He said he heard good things about that. So that was nice. But it was funny. His first response was like, oh, supplement, huh?
Another supplement. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. That's awesome. Okay, let's get into the third one here, which had some knee surgery going on. Tell us about that one.
So I had a mare, and I just had some slight little knee issues, nothing that affected her performance in any way, but we just wanted for her longevity of her and hoping to get her to run her for a long time. We decided to go ahead and do a knee surgery on her just to clean some things up. And we got her back from the knee surgery, and oh my gosh, I about cried. They were big. Both knees were huge. They were real lumpy, which I've had a knee surgery, so I know my knee doesn't look the same. Mm-hmm. But I guess I just wasn't envisioning her knee looking like that.
Right.
So as soon as I got her back, we put her on 2 scoops in the morning, and gosh, I would say within 14 to 20 days, her swelling in her knee went down. The majority of the lumpy, bumpy stuff in her knees has gone away. She's still got a few, but for the outside person to look at her, they look almost normal. I would say they've gone down in half. Like they were massive when I picked her up.
Wow.
So that's been a huge in that aspect. Like, we've just seen it work in so many different ways.
Sure. Now, for anyone tuning in and just hearing the story about the knee surgery and how swollen it was, and then you skip forward X amount of weeks and the swelling's down, it's like, well, you could think, well, of course it's going to go down because it's healing. I mean, that would be a logical thing to think of. However, we hear this question that I'm going to ask you next, and we hear this in every single case that I know of where we're talking about a horse with surgery or healing from an injury. When they're using the Equinety Horse Excel, did this horse heal ahead of schedule?
Yes, I was able to get back on her and working, riding, running conditions 2 weeks early.
Yeah.
And that was with me doing nothing. I mean, we cold hosed, and the vet didn't even say we needed to do that, but that was literally with nothing else, just the Equinety and cold hosing. And I sent the videos to my vet. And I was like, hey, this is how she's acting in the field. Do you think I can get back on her? And he calls me and he's like, Ashley, it's early. Is there heat? I'm like, nope, there's no heat. And he's like, see how she acts tomorrow when you turn her out. So I sent him the video the next day of her being turned out, bucking, being ridiculous, running, pivoting, spinning. And he's like, all right, I guess you can go ahead and get on her, but just pay attention to her knees. And he called me 2 days later and he's like, how's it going? I'm like, she has never felt this good. Like, she just feels great. He's like, is there heat? Is there swelling? I'm like, no, my swelling's cut in half. There is no swelling, no heat. So he was just astonished by the fact that I was able to get on her. We were kind of already pushing it for when our set date to ride was. And then when we decided, okay, we're going to try it, and we're 2 weeks ahead of that already pushing it date, he just could not believe that.
Which, and again, that's very, very common. But again, you know, the product is giving the body what it needs to help repair. And so it seems to speed everything up. So getting into the last couple of horses, which really don't have any issues, but what are you looking for, or what were you looking for? What made you decide to put them on these other horses that didn't really have any issues going on?
We deal a lot with just colts, babies that were hauling all over the place, and just kind of putting them in stressful, overwhelming situations, I guess. You try to prepare them, but it doesn't always work that way. So we actually started kind of guinea pigging it on some foals for just their focus. Like, we don't want to drug them, but we want to give them something just to help them just like focus. You're here to do your job, but stay calm. And the first 2 babies we put that on, it was huge. To not have to drug them and just be something you put in their feed that does not take away from their run or their athletic ability. It just really helps them. I say woosah. Yeah. But it just helps that. So after those first 2 that we put on it, after that, we were just kind of like, all the horses are getting it, babies, old horses. And that's kind of how we just put everybody on it and kind of see where it works on each individual horse. Some have issues, and others don't have issues, but we still see it do something in everything we've put it in their feed.
Sure. And we have a lot of people that do use it just as a preventative, you know, for just the overall preventative, but also focus, stamina. How have you noticed the recovery after you're working them out and training them and doing things like that, and just the recovery aspect? Well,
as far as stamina and recovery, is a huge difference, because I feel like every barrel racer, they always have to change things up and do things different. So I have had a couple where I've had it on them, or them on the Equinety, and then I'm like, is it really, do we really, even though I've seen huge difference on horses with issues, so I'll take it off, I won't feed it to them. And I'm not kidding you, like night and day difference. It's like, oh, they need back on that. You just see their stamina, their workouts remain the same with or without Equinety. Their cool down and their recovery is the same with or without Equinety. But you just notice a much larger difference when they're on it compared to not. It's just hard to explain.
Yeah. Well, and even getting into, again, going back to just the science aspect, again, you know, Equinety Horse Excel, 100% pure amino acids. There's no fillers, no sugars, no starches, and there's no loading dose. So
yes, which is fantastic.
Yes. So what?
Because then you're not having to mark on your calendar like, okay, today is the end of 2 weeks, and then you got to start doing this, and then you got to do this. So it's just fantastic to open it and feed it.
Yes. Now, what was your initial thoughts now, of course, we're going back 4.5 years here, but when you open the tub and there's that tiny little scoop, which is 5.2 grams, like a rounded teaspoon. What was your thought on that?
I think my original reaction, I looked at my husband and I was like, there's no way this tiny little scoop once a day is going to do anything.
Yeah.
Do you know how big that horse is? This tiny little scoop is going to do something.
Yeah.
I think that was my words to him, was like, once a day, no loading dose, and this scoop's tiny.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I remember thinking, okay, I'm gonna feed more. This tub is not gonna last me that long.
Yeah. That's funny. Well, we get a lot of people say, oh, well, I have a mini that's 350 pounds. What's the dose? Or I've got a draft horse, 2,200 pounds. What's the dose? It's the same dose. Just the tiny little scoop.
It's fantastic because, again, kind of back to, we don't feed a lot of supplements. Like, we're busy. My husband and I both have full-time jobs. We have 2 kids. And then, we raise and train our own horses, plus we have outside horses. So I always joke, and when I hear my friends feed all this stuff, I'm like, I am not a scientist. I just want to feed my horse and be done. So it's amazing that everybody, no matter the size of the horse, age of the horse, the issue of the horse, it's all the same.
Yep.
So everybody just gets a scoop. You don't have to measure things out or weigh things out. It just makes things easy. Yeah,
it definitely does. So I touched upon this earlier. And well, actually, as you said, you said this has been a game changer for your whole program, with your busy lives and everything you're doing. You don't have to think about anything. You just give everybody a scoop. Or in some cases, you're given 2 scoops.
Yep.
But so, again, the reason why this product helps in so many different ways is because we're targeting the pituitary gland, which is the master gland in the body. That's what releases the hormones that are repairing. And since we're giving the body what it needs to release its own hormones, it's that horse's body that's sending its own hormones to the problem areas. So that's why it can help with navicular, sidewall, recovering from a surgery, focus, stamina, fast recovery with horses that don't have any other issues, but they're athletes, they're soft tissue, all that kind of stuff. So we're blessed because, it's one of the reasons I started the podcast, just to get these stories out there. It's pretty amazing. Yeah. Almost sounds too good to be true. So
It is, especially after that first horse. I'm like, and then we did it on the second horse, and the vet looks at me after taking the x-rays and was like, what'd you do? I just fed a scoop, a little tiny scoop of powder.
Oh, man.
And it's amazing. Each horse you put it on, it's like I said, whether they have issues or no issues, you see something, whether it be their focus, their stamina, their recovery. Like you're seeing it do something in that horse. And then you second guess yourself and you take them off and you're like, no, put them back on.
Yeah.
So it for sure, every horse we have gets it at least 1 scoop. The ones with issues we give it, or not necessarily issues, but the ones that have leg issues or feet issues or whatever, they get the 2 scoops. But
the special ones.
Yes, the special ones. My husband would appreciate that. He calls them the more expensive ones.
Yes. No, they're special, not more expensive.
Yes. Yes.
Now, I didn't ask you this question before, so I'm going in blind here. But since you've been using the Equinety products, would you say that overall you are saving money? And this might be even a little leading, but we typically hear people are saving 20 to 40% in medical and or other supplements, possibly even feed bill. Do you find
huge.
Do you find the same?
Yes.
About the same?
Yes. We have had, just because we, like I said, we raise and train, we see the babies transition from babies to like that uglier stage where they're growing. And we have found that when you put them on it a little bit younger, that they just kind of tend to keep their more prettier bodies, I guess. Like they kind of stay a little bit more filled out. Their hair coat stays a little bit better. So even at a young age, they just stay not in that ugly, as we call it. And just certain issues like that horse in Navicular, like we were doing everything we could do for him. He had already the special shoes. He had already all the maintenance he could have. So it was pretty much you just deal with what you had. And then we put him on the Equinety and you almost didn't need that much.
Yeah.
So things like that, you go from having a horse that could barely trot, and if he did, it wasn't for very long, to a horse that I could get on and go back to running barrels on.
Mm-hmm.
So things like, I think it just helps tremendously, whether it be saving the horse practically or just your vet bills and your maintenance alone to keep your horse that's special that you're trying to keep sound.
Sure. Yep.
That is a lot cheaper than even walking in a vet clinic.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So that's awesome. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to share these stories. Outside of everything that we've talked about, if there's somebody kind of tuning in for the first time and there might still be a little bit on the fence, is there anything that you would say to them to maybe just get them to give it a try?
Gosh, I feel like it's a product that speaks for himself. Like, you get the little, I think you call it the sample container, the 30-day container of that. And I mean, if you don't see difference in 30 days, I feel like I'm not sure there would be much that could.
Yeah.
To be honest, like we've just tried. So being in the horse industry for so long and growing up in it, you try and you experiment and you do and you inject and you do all these things. which I'm not saying any of which are bad, but when you can just give one scoop of something, I feel like a lot of non-barrel racing husbands would appreciate just that one scoop rather than trying to mix and match. And so I feel like whoever doesn't jump on the bandwagon, if you want to call it a bandwagon, it's crazy, because I think it for sure speaks for itself.
Sure. Yeah.
In that first 2 weeks, 30 days, you're for sure seeing a huge difference. I mean, I would say probably total, we've had probably over 20 horses on it, and every horse I've seen it do something.
Yeah.
So for us, it's been huge.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, and I'll go conservative here, but I would say 99% of people would see changes or should see changes in 30 days or less. The product starts working in 24 hours. There are those times where people have said, well, we didn't notice difference till the 4th month. And, that's going to happen, I suppose. But I'd say the vast majority is very, very quick. So awesome.
Yes, ours, I don't think any of ours, by any of the issues or just trying to maintain things, I think we noticed a difference in every single one of them by that 30-day mark.
Sure.
Like, it was huge, especially if you can video, so that way you yourself can remind of like, okay, this is what the horse used to look like or used to do.
Yeah.
And then you look back and you're like, oh, is it working? And then you look back on those videos and you're like, okay, it is incredible.
Yep. That's proof in the pudding right there. So
yeah.
Awesome. Well, Ashley, thank you so much. Ashley Thompson out of Michigan, thank you so much for taking the time to share your stories here on the Equinety Podcast.
No problem. I appreciate it.
That's all for this episode of the Equinety Podcast. For more information on purchasing Equinety, be sure to visit our website at teamequinety.com, where you'll also find product information as well as more testimonials on how others have seen amazing results by implementing Equinety into their horse's supplement regime. We'll have more stories on how Equinety is helping horses worldwide right here on a future episode of the Equinety Podcast.